You guys today, finally, the WNBA and its owners have sent a proposal to the union. After 6 weeks of seeing Nneka Ogwumike show up on the caller ID and just letting the phone ring, after 6 weeks of receiving text messages from the players' union and leaving them on red, after 6 weeks of email after email after email after email, and the owners saying, gosh, these chicks are annoying. Finally, they said, you know what? Let's just throw something together real quick and
6 weeks. That's how long the WNBA owners left the Players Association on red. 6 weeks of text messages ignored, emails unanswered, phone calls that went straight to voicemail. And when the league finally responded this past Friday with their latest CBA proposal, the timing tells you everything you need to know about how seriously they're taking these negotiations. Because here's what happened during those 6 weeks of radio silence. While Nneka Ogwumike and the union leadership were scrambling to get a response, the owners were sitting back, watching the clock tick down, knowing that every day that passes without a deal puts more pressure on the players to cave. It's negotiation tactics 101. Make them sweat, make them desperate, then lowball them when they're vulnerable.
Alexa Filippo of ESPN can confirm that the WNBA has submitted a new proposal today to the WNBPA, as expected following Monday's meeting. The WNBA Players Association initially submitted a proposal around Christmas that the league had yet to formally respond to until today. They sent a proposal around Christmas, and here we are 1 week out from Valentine's Day, and the league said, all right, just send them something back. What do we know so far? WNBA submits late.
So let's break down what we actually know about this proposal that took 6 weeks to put together. According to ESPN's Alexa Filippo, the league submitted their response on Friday evening, February 7th, after a 3-hour meeting at the NBA offices the previous Monday. That meeting happened on February 3rd. The players had submitted their Christmas proposal back in late December. Do the math. That's 45 days minimum. A month and a half to respond to a proposal from your own employees who are trying to negotiate their working conditions. And what makes this even more insulting is what Nneka Ogwumike said just hours before the proposal finally arrived. She told reporters that significant work remains for the season to start on time, but that fans should remain confident games will be played. Notice the careful language there. She didn't say the full season would be played. She said games will be played. How many games? 10, 20, 30. That's not reassurance. That's a warning shot.
Soon have a new proposal on a collective bargaining agreement. It came Friday evening when the WNBA submitted its latest proposal to the union, a source told ESPN, confirming news first reported by the Associated Press. This ended a more than 6-week wait from the Players Association for a counter to its latest offer. Players waking up every day. Did they respond yet? No. Hey, just checking in. Any update? It wasn't immediately known what the league's new offer entailed. Speaking earlier Friday.
Now here's where this gets interesting. The league's previous proposal, the one they presented last month before going silent, included some genuinely significant improvements. Maximum salaries jumping from $249,000 to potentially over $2 million by the end of the agreement. Free league pass for all players. Codified charter flights, pregnant players getting the right to refuse trades. 37 different areas where the owners claimed they were willing to make concessions. 37 items they could point to and say, look how generous we're being, but strip away all those improvements, all those shiny new benefits, and you get to the one issue that actually matters. The only issue that's holding up this entire negotiation, revenue sharing.
On key issues such as revenue sharing in their effort to strike a new CBA. We get it, revenue sharing. We get it. If that's the only key issue, well, just say that's the only key issue. Not few key issues. It's the only key issue. The WNBA, the owners, they've given them everything else but the 30%. That's all they want, is just the 30%. The CBA is supposed to begin May 8th. The season is supposed to begin May 8th, but an expansion draft, free agency, and a rookie draft also need to happen before the league tips off. Ogwumike said once revenue sharing is solved, the rest hopefully will fall into place.
The players want 30% of gross revenue. That's money generated before expenses. The owners are offering 70% of net revenue, which sounds better until you realize that's their take of the profits after expenses are paid. And what counts as expenses? Upgraded facilities, charter flights, 5-star hotels, medical services, security, salaries for coaches and front office staff, marketing budgets, arena rental fees. And as the reporting specifically notes, everything else the league needs to operate on a day-in, day-out basis. See the problem? Under the owner's proposal, the players get a percentage of what's left after the league spends money on literally everything. It's like telling your kid they can have half of whatever's in your wallet after you pay the mortgage, the car payment, the grocery bill, and your country club membership. Sure, it's technically 50%, but 50% of what exactly? The players aren't stupid. They understand the difference between gross and net. They understand that when you let the other side control what counts as an expense, you're giving them the ability to manipulate your compensation. Spend more on facilities, players' share goes down. Increase the marketing budget, players' share goes down. Hire more executives, players' share goes down.
We're just waiting on it. We know. The players want around 30% of gross revenue, money generated before expenses, for the first year in their latest proposal. Under the league's previous proposal, players would receive in excess of 70% of net revenue, though that would be their take of the profits after expenses are paid. Those expenses would include upgraded facilities, charter flights, 5-star hotels, medical services, security, and arenas, and everything else the league needs to operate on a day-in and day-out basis. They leave that part out. Everything else the league needs to operate in a day-in, day-out basis, it's considered expenses.
And this is why Nneka Ogwumike keeps saying that once revenue sharing is solved, everything else will fall into place quickly. Because everything else has already fallen into place. The owners have already agreed to the charter flights, the improved facilities, the salary increases, the expanded rosters. Those battles are won. But here's what makes the owners' strategy so calculated. By publicly announcing all those 37 concessions, they're framing the narrative. They're getting ahead of the PR battle. When casual fans hear that the league is offering $2 million max contracts and charter flights and free league pass, the immediate reaction is, what more do these players want? How greedy can you be? It's brilliant, actually. Evil, but brilliant. Because most people don't understand the difference between gross and net revenue. Most people hear 70% and think that sounds pretty generous. The owners know this. They're counting on it.
Which I think is huge, actually. I think it's huge. Increasing the guaranteed contracts on a team and codifying charter flights as well as other first-class travel considerations. If a new CBA isn't agreed upon soon, I wasn't going to touch on the pregnant players thing, but we'll let that go for now. If a new CBA isn't agreed upon soon, it could delay the start of the 2026 season. It has already delayed the expansion draft for Toronto and Portland. The CBA was announced in the middle of January 2020, a month after it had been agreed to. It could easily take 2 months from when a new CBA is.
Now let's talk about what happened during those 6 weeks of silence, because this is where things get really interesting. Nneka Ogwumike was down in Nashville at Athletes Unlimited, holding a players-only meeting with WNBA players who were competing in that league. Executive committee members Brianna Turner and Alicia Clark were there too. And what did Ogwumike say after that meeting? Quote, I actually like the fact that we've had these 6 weeks now, still waiting for a proposal. It's given us the gift of time. The gift of time. Let that sink in for a second. She's reframing 6 weeks of being ignored as somehow beneficial to the players. She's spinning the owner's negotiation tactic as if it was actually helpful. And you know what? Maybe she's right. Maybe those 6 weeks did give the union time to talk to players, to shore up support, to make sure everyone's on the same page. But here's the thing. If those 6 weeks were so beneficial, why was the union publicly complaining about the lack of response? Why were they sending statement after statement about how the owners weren't taking negotiations seriously? You can't have it both ways. Either the silence was frustrating and disrespectful, or it was a gift. Pick one.
It was a chance to take a pulse of the players. Quote, I actually like the fact that we've had these 6 weeks now, still waiting for a proposal. It's given us the gift of time. So what are you whining about? Why are you whining for? You had 6 weeks. Why are you complaining then? If now we know that 6 weeks was perfect, they said, here, we'll give you 6 weeks, we'll give you time, you can talk to this person, that person, really shop it around. Well, then why were you guys complaining this whole entire time that it's taken the league so long to respond? They're helping you out. They know you guys lack in the negotiating department, so they said...
The season is supposed to start May 8th. That's 3 months away, and before the season can start, the league needs to hold an expansion draft for Toronto and Portland, conduct free agency, and run the rookie draft. Under normal circumstances, the CBA was announced in mid-January 2020, a full month after it had been agreed to, and that was without an expansion draft to complicate things. So if we're being realistic, the league and union probably need to have a deal finalized by early March to have any chance of starting on time. That's less than 4 weeks away. 4 weeks to bridge what Ogwumike herself describes as a significant gap on revenue sharing. And here's what nobody's talking about. 80% of WNBA players are free agents this offseason. 80%. That's not a typo. Because of the massive salary increases expected in the new CBA, teams have been holding off on signing players to extensions. Everyone's waiting to see what the new salary structure looks like before committing long-term.
Maybe we'll appeal to their emotions a little bit more, because, this is an emotional bunch here. I like that, Bane. The owners are just going to submit the same proposal they submitted before the Players Association's December proposal. How funny would that be? Now, Nneka Ogwumike was down there in Athletes Limited. In hindsight, now we know that they sent a proposal. But let's just read along, shall we? President Nneka Ogwumike and WNBA staff were in Nashville last night, where they held a players-only meeting with AU players, including executive committee members Brianna Turner and Alicia Clark. I want to hear...
So what happens if there's no deal by early March? What happens if the season gets delayed? The reporting mentions that every game that gets missed means revenue lost from sponsorships, television money, and fan support, and that hurts both sides. But does it hurt both sides equally? Because here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. The WNBA owners are, almost without exception, wealthy beyond comprehension. They own NBA teams worth billions of dollars. The WNBA is, for most of them, a rounding error on their balance sheet. A vanity project. A tax write-off. Something they can point to and say, look how progressive I am. I support women's sports. The players, on the other hand, are professional athletes with limited earning windows. The average WNBA career is less than 4 years. Every game they miss is income they'll never get back. Every week without a season is a week closer to retirement without maximizing their earnings. The owners can wait, the players can't. And the owners know this.
Realistic and sign that on the dotted line. Annie, you are too old guard positive for me. Oh, call out these delusional, entitled, childish, unprofessional, low IQ players still listening to the union leaders that want the season canceled. Wake up, fools. Yeah, that's a good point. The executive committee, they're really capitalizing on the lack of understanding that some players have. They're really taking advantage of the lack of free thinking that takes place with some of these players in this league. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As soon as we hear some details about this latest offer, I'll get them right to you. Appreciate all the support.
Here's what makes this entire situation so frustrating. The WNBA just came off its most successful season in history. Caitlin Clark's rookie year brought unprecedented attention to the league. Attendance records were shattered. Television ratings were through the roof. Merchandise sales exploded. The league signed new media deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This should be the moment when everyone's celebrating, when the players are finally getting their due after years of grinding in obscurity. Instead, we're staring down the barrel of a potential work stoppage, because the owners won't agree to a transparent revenue-sharing model. And you know what the really cynical part of me thinks? I think the owners are testing the union. I think they want to see if the players will actually follow through on their strike authorization vote from December. Because if the players blink, if they cave and accept the owners' terms just to get the season started, the owners will know they have all the leverage in future negotiations too. But here's what really matters. This isn't just about money. It's about respect. It's about the league's owners treating the players like partners instead of employees to be managed. Because when you ignore someone's messages for 6 weeks, when you leave their proposal sitting unanswered for a month and a half, You're sending a very clear message about how much you value their input. And that message is, we don't. The players want 30% of gross revenue because they want transparency. They want to know exactly how much money the league is generating, and they want their fair share of it before the owners start deciding how to spend it. That's not unreasonable. That's basic business sense. The owners want to give them 70% of net revenue because it gives them control. They get to decide what counts as an expense. They get to decide how much to spend on facilities and marketing and executive salaries. And whatever's left over after all those decisions, sure, the players can have most of that. It's two completely different philosophies about what partnership means. The players want to be stakeholders. The owners want them to be grateful employees. Now here's where this proposal that finally came through on Friday gets interesting. We don't know the details yet. The league hasn't released the specifics, and the union hasn't commented publicly beyond acknowledging they received it. But there's one scenario that would be absolutely hilarious in a dark comedy kind of way. What if the owners just sent back their previous proposal with minor tweaks? What if they took those 6 weeks and basically just rearranged some words, added a few commas, maybe threw in 1 or 2 additional minor concessions, and called it a new offer? Because that would be the ultimate power move. That would be the owners saying, we heard everything you said, we considered your position carefully, and our answer is still no. And honestly, that's probably exactly what happened. Because when you take 6 weeks to respond to a proposal, you're not spending 6 weeks drafting a response. You're spending 6 weeks letting the other side stew. You're spending 6 weeks letting the pressure build. You're spending 6 weeks making it clear who has the power in this relationship. The union sent their proposal around Christmas. The owners waited until February 7th to respond. That's not negotiation, that's intimidation. So where does this leave us? The season is supposed to start in 3 months. Free agency is in limbo. The expansion draft is delayed. 80% of the league's players don't know where they'll be playing or how much they'll be making. And the two sides are, by Nneka Ogwumike's own admission, not close on the key issue of revenue sharing. Something's got to give. Either the owners come up significantly on their revenue sharing offer, or the players accept less than what they're asking for, or we're looking at a delayed or shortened season. Those are the only 3 options. And here's my prediction. The owners will eventually agree to something closer to what the players want, but only after dragging this out as long as possible. They'll wait until the absolute last minute, until the pressure is unbearable, until the players are desperate, and then they'll make a slightly improved offer and frame it as a generous compromise. The players will probably take it, because the alternative is losing games and income. The union will claim victory because they got more than the original offer. The owners will claim victory because they didn't give up as much as the players initially demanded. And both sides will go into the next negotiation knowing exactly how this dance works. But here's what bothers me most about this whole situation. The WNBA is finally having its moment, finally getting mainstream attention, finally proving that there's a massive audience for women's professional basketball. And instead of capitalizing on that momentum, instead of riding that wave, we're stuck watching a labor dispute play out in slow motion. The owners should be throwing money at these players. They should be making it rain. They should be saying, you just delivered our best season ever. Here's your cut. Instead, they're playing hardball over revenue sharing percentages, while the clock ticks down toward a potential work stoppage. It's short-sighted. It's greedy. And it's exactly what you'd expect from people who view the WNBA as a side project, rather than a legitimate business worth investing in properly. So here's my question for you. Do you think the players should hold firm on their 30% gross revenue demand, even if it means delaying or canceling part of the season? Or should they take the best deal they can get right now and fight for more in the next negotiation? Because that's really what this comes down to. Is it better to get something now, or hold out for everything you deserve and risk losing it all? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe, because we're going to be covering every development in these negotiations as they happen.